Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're headed to Southeast Asia, to check out Vietnam's goal of hitting 8% GDP growth by 2025. And we're using this recent YouTube video we found as a starting point to really break down what it'll take to actually reach that number.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me is that this isn't just about some random number.
Yeah.
It's about Vietnam wanting to jump up to a whole new level economically.
Right. And I'm really curious about how they actually plan to make that jump. The video really digs into some specific things that have to happen for them to hit 8%. For example, consumer spending would have to increase by 12%, which just seems like a lot to me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that just shows that it's not just one part of the economy that needs to do well, right? It's got to be everything working together.
Okay, so let's look closer at how all those parts work together. What are some of the most important areas that have to be totally on fire for them to get to this goal?
Well, manufacturing and construction are definitely key. Those have been the main drivers of their economy lately, bringing in foreign investment and creating jobs and all that.
Yeah, you see companies like Samsung and Intel making big investments there, but if these industries are already doing well, what needs to happen for them to grow even faster?
So the video points out that to reach that big 8% goal overall, manufacturing and construction would have to grow by over 9%, which is a pretty big jump considering, wages are going up and there's always a chance of trade problems and they got to keep up with new technologies too.
So they can't just keep doing what they're doing. They have to really speed things up, and I imagine that would put a lot of pressure on their resources like raw materials and finding skilled workers.
Exactly. And then there's the question of how are they going to pay for all this growth?
Yeah.
Vietnam relies a lot on credit, like bank loans, to keep things moving.
So they're basically borrowing money to invest in the future. Do you think that's a sustainable strategy, especially if they're trying to grow so quickly?
That's the big question, isn't it? The video says that credit growth would have to hit something like 16% to make this 8% GDP target happen. And in the past, we've seen that when credit grows too fast, it can cause problems.
Oh boy, like what? Let me guess. Inflation.
Bingo. You pump too much money into the economy, and you get what economists call demand pull. Inflation. Basically, too much money chasing too few goods and services, and prices start going up.
It's like when a new game console comes out and everyone wants it, suddenly there's not enough to go around, so the prices go crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the video makes it clear that Vietnam's government is okay with some inflation, maybe up to 5% in order to reach this ambitious goal. But it makes you wonder, are the Vietnamese people willing to deal with higher prices for the sake of faster growth?
It's a tough balancing act for sure, trying to make the economy grow without letting things spiral out of control. But haven't they been in this situation before?
They have, actually, and it didn't go so well.
Ooh, tell me more. What happened?
Well, back in the late 2000s, Vietnam saw a period of really fast credit growth, and inflation went through the roof. In 2008, it actually hit almost 23%.
Wow, that's a lot of inflation. What caused that to happen?
Well, there were a few things happening at once. The government was spending a ton of money on infrastructure projects, which increased demand, and at the same time, global commodity prices were going up, which also put pressure on prices within Vietnam.
So they were getting hit from both sides, internal and external factors pushing inflation higher?
Precisely. And it took them years to bring inflation back under control. That experience is a good reminder that fast growth can have a downside.
So it's like they're walking a tightrope, they want to grow quickly, but they also need to avoid making the same mistakes they made in the past. It kind of makes you think, is this 8% goal even realistic, or is it going to put all the stability they've worked so hard for at risk?
It's a valid concern. And it leads to a really important question. Is Vietnam ready to handle all the complexities of super fast growth without repeating the mistakes of the past?
Okay, so let's break that down. What are some of the things that might determine whether they succeed or fail in this challenging situation?
Well, for one thing, they need to be really smart about how they use credit. If too much money goes into risky investments or things that aren't productive, it could create bubbles that eventually burst, and then you have financial instability.
So it's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's about making sure it goes to the right places, the places that will create sustainable growth. And what about foreign investment companies like Samsung have been a big part of Vietnam's manufacturing boom, right?
Absolutely. Attracting foreign direct investment is crucial for them to keep growing, but they can't just take any investment. They need to be strategic about it, focus on industries that create good jobs, promote innovation, and help build a more diverse economy.
Because it's not about chasing the next big factory. It's about getting investments that align with their long-term goals. And how does technology fit into all of this?
That's a big piece of the puzzle. Automation and AI are changing manufacturing all over the world. Vietnam needs to embrace these changes to stay competitive.
So it's about working smarter, not just harder, but investing in technology also means they need a skilled workforce. How are they addressing that?
They've been putting a lot of resources into education and vocational training. They understand that having highly skilled workers is key to attracting the right kind of investments and moving up the value chain.
So they're taking a multi-pronged approach, trying to boost production, manage credit, wisely attract the right kind of foreign investment, and make sure their workforce has the skills for a tech-driven economy. It sounds like a pretty ambitious plan.
It is. And to make things even more complicated, they also have to think about the potential social consequences of rapid growth.
Ah, yes, the human side of the
Okay.
equation. What are some of the main concerns there?
Well, sometimes when an economy grows really fast, it
Yeah.
can make income inequality worse. As certain sectors and regions boom, others might get left behind, which can lead to social unrest.
Mhm.
Vietnam needs to make sure that everyone benefits from this growth, not just a select few.
It's about creating opportunities for everyone, not just a privileged few. And what about environmental sustainability? Can Vietnam grow this fast without putting too much strain on its natural resources?
That's another crucial factor. They'll need to find a balance between economic development and environmental protection, invest in renewable energy, promote sustainable practices, and try to minimize the impact of industrialization.
It sounds like they're facing a really complicated web of challenges and opportunities as they try to reach this ambitious growth target.
They definitely are, and we've only just scratched the surface.
This is already super interesting. I
Yeah.
can't wait to dive deeper into these issues and look at some potential solutions in the next part of our deep dive.
It's interesting to think about this 8% goal in the context of Vietnam's recent economic history.
Yeah.
They've already grown so much in the last few decades. They went from being mostly an agricultural society to like a major manufacturing center.
Yeah, that's true. It's easy to forget how far they've come already. But if they want to keep that momentum going, they can't just sit back and relax. The global economy is always changing, and Vietnam has to adapt to stay ahead.
Right. One of the biggest challenges they face is keeping their advantage in manufacturing, like we talked about before. Wages going up is natural when an economy grows. But that can also make a country less competitive when it comes to industries that rely on lots of labor.
It's like a catch-22. They need higher wages so people can live better, but those higher wages could make them less attractive to companies looking for cheap labor. How are they dealing with that?
Well, they're trying to move up the value chain, focusing on more high-tech manufacturing and industries that need more skilled workers. That's where all those investments in education and training become really important. They're trying to build a workforce that can compete on quality and innovation, not just on price.
So they want to be more like Japan or South Korea, known for making high quality products instead of just competing on price with countries like Bangladesh or Cambodia. That makes sense. But what about external factors, things happening outside of Vietnam? The global economy feels pretty shaky right now. How could that affect their growth?
That's a really important point. The video we're looking at doesn't really go into it too much, but the big thing that everyone's thinking about is China.
Oh, yeah. China's economy is slowing down, and the trade war with the U.S. is causing problems for everyone in the region. How could that impact Vietnam?
Well, it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, some companies are moving their factories out of China to avoid tariffs and, diversify their supply chains. Vietnam could benefit from that because it's seen as a stable and reliable option.
So they could get some of those manufacturing jobs that are leaving China.
Exactly. But there are also risks. If things get worse between the U.S. and China, it could disrupt supply chains and make people less likely to buy Vietnamese products. Plus, Vietnam still gets a lot of its raw materials and parts from China, so any problems there could have a big impact on their manufacturing sector.
It's like they're trying to dodge bullets. They need to take advantage of the opportunities created by China's problems, but also avoid the potential dangers. It's a tricky situation.
It definitely is. And speaking of tricky situations, let's go back to the issue of inflation. We touched on it before, but it's worth looking at more closely.
Yeah, the ghost of inflation, like we called it, it seems like something Vietnam has struggled with a lot in the past. Why is that?
Well, part of it is because of how their economy is structured. They still rely a lot on exports,
Hmm.
which makes them vulnerable to changes in global demand, and the prices of commodities, and their financial system isn't as developed as some other countries, so it's not as good at handling shocks.
So they're more sensitive to things happening outside of Vietnam that can push prices up.
Right. And then there's the problem of managing expectations. If people start thinking the prices are going to rise quickly, they might start spending more now, which just makes inflation worse. It can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So how do you break that cycle? How do you convince people that the government has inflation under control and that their money will be worth something tomorrow?
That's where the central bank has to step in. They need to show that they're serious about keeping prices stable, even if that means slowing down economic growth in the short term.
So it's about making tough decisions, putting long-term stability ahead of short-term gains. But isn't that hard to do?
Mhm.
Politically, people tend to focus on what's happening now, not on some potential problem in the future.
It is a challenge, and it requires strong leadership and a commitment to being open and honest. The government needs to clearly explain their policies and why they're doing what they're doing, and they need to build trust with the public, show them that they're acting in everyone's best interests.
Transparency and trust, those are essential for any successful economic strategy.
Absolutely, and it's especially important in a country like Vietnam that's developing so quickly. Expectations are high, and people want to see the benefits of growth in their own lives.
It makes me wonder about those potential benefits. We've talked a lot about the risks, but let's think about the good stuff for a minute. If Vietnam does manage to hit that 8% growth target, what would it mean for the people living there?
Well, the most obvious benefit is that people's lives would get better in Bli. Higher GDP usually means higher incomes, better access to education and healthcare, and just a higher overall standard of living.
So it's not just about abstract numbers, it's about real improvements in people's daily lives.
Exactly. And fast economic growth can also create new jobs, especially in areas like manufacturing, construction, and tourism.
Yeah.
This can help people escape poverty and lead to a more dynamic and prosperous society.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. But we've also talked about the possibility of income inequality getting worse. How can they make sure that everyone benefits from this growth, not just a small group of people?
That's really important. They need to invest in education and training, so everyone has the skills they need to participate in the modern economy, and they need to create social safety nets to protect the people who are most vulnerable.
So it's about making sure everyone has a chance to succeed, not just a select few. And what about Vietnam's place in the world? How would hitting this growth target affect their influence globally?
It would definitely make them more important on the world stage. A fast-growing economy with a young and energetic population is going to get attention. It could make them a more appealing place for foreign investment and give them more influence in the region and around the world.
So it's not just about developing internally, it's about projecting a strong image internationally. But with all this talk of growth and progress, we can't forget about the potential environmental costs. Can Vietnam achieve their economic goals without damaging their environment and contributing to climate change?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's something we'll explore more deeply in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the challenges and opportunities of trying to achieve sustainable development in a rapidly growing economy.
This is already giving me a lot to think about. I'm really interested to hear more about how Vietnam can balance their economic goals with their responsibility to protect the environment. Okay, so we've been talking about all the challenges Vietnam faces if they want to hit that 8% GDP growth target, but now let's flip it and talk about what they stand to gain if they can actually pull it off. If they can make it through all those obstacles, what could this mean for their future?
Well, imagine if Vietnam isn't just a place where things are made, but like a hub for innovation and technology.
Hmm.
A place where skilled workers are actually designing the next generation of products and services, not just putting them together.
Yeah, that would be a huge change, right? Going from just making cheap stuff to actually being a real innovator.
Exactly. And that kind of change would have a big impact on everyone in Vietnam. Higher paying jobs, a better quality of life, more access to education and healthcare. Those are all possible outcomes if they can successfully become a more knowledge-based economy.
It sounds like they're trying to create a future where they're competing with the best of the best, not just on price, but on quality innovation, the whole package. But what about the people who might get left behind during this transition? We talked about the risk of some people getting richer while others stay poor. How can Vietnam make sure everyone benefits from this growth?
That's where those investments in education and social safety nets are so important. They have to create opportunities for everyone to be a part of this new economy, not just the people with fancy degrees or special skills.
So it's about making sure everyone has the chance to improve their skills and adapt to the new reality no matter where they come from. It makes me think about what this could mean for Vietnam's cities. Rapid urbanization often leads to problems like overcrowding and strain on infrastructure. How are they
Mm.
planning to deal with that?
They're putting a lot of money into infrastructure development, especially in things like transportation, energy, and telecommunications. But it's not just about building more roads and power plants. They need to think about sustainable urban planning,
Hmm.
creating cities that are good places to live while also being economically vibrant and environmentally responsible.
And that brings us back to the question of environmental sustainability. Can Vietnam really achieve this level of growth without causing major damage to their environment?
It's a valid concern for sure, especially since they rely so much on manufacturing, which can use a lot of resources and create pollution. But they also know that they need to find a more sustainable way forward.
So, what are they doing to try and lessen the environmental impact of their growth?
They're investing in renewable energy like solar and wind power. They're encouraging industries and businesses to use energy more efficiently, and they're trying to protect their forests and biodiversity because they understand that a healthy environment is essential for long-term economic success.
So, it's like they're trying to walk a tightrope. They need to balance the demands of economic growth with the need to protect the environment.
It's a good way to put it. It's a delicate balancing act, but if they can get it right, they could be a role model for other developing countries, showing them that you don't have to choose between economic prosperity and a healthy environment. You can have both.
That would be a really powerful message, right? Proving to the world that you can have your cake and eat it too.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole story so interesting. Vietnam's journey is like a miniature version of the challenges and opportunities facing the whole world as we try to build a more sustainable and fair future.
It reminds us that progress isn't always a straight line. There are going to be bumps in the road, tough choices to make, and unexpected challenges. But with good planning, smart investments, and a commitment to inclusivity and sustainability, Vietnam could show everyone how to achieve real and lasting prosperity.
And their story is still being written. We'll be watching to see what happens next.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Vietnam's economic ambitions. We've looked at the challenges they face, the possibilities that lie ahead, and what they stand to gain if they can achieve their goals. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that economic development is complicated. There's no magic formula or easy solution. It takes careful planning, strategic investments, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
And it's important to remember that economic growth isn't the end goal. It's a way to achieve something bigger. The ultimate goal is to make people's lives better, create a more just and equitable society, and protect our planet for the generations to come.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into Vietnam's economic dreams. We encourage you to keep learning about this topic and to share your own ideas and perspectives. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.